He laughed at me for renting, but he had no idea the house he bragged about was actually mine. That's right. My brother spent years mocking me, calling me a failure, a disappointment, someone who would never amount to anything. He had the cars, the mansion, the applause. I had silence. But behind that silence, I was building an empire. And when everything collapsed, he found himself paying rent to me. You won't believe how this story ends. Stick around, because the final twist will leave you speechless. I leaned against the marble kitchen counter, the chill from a soda can clinging to my fingers. The room was filled with the scent of glazed ham and overripe lilies, Easter decor wilting under the two bright lights. Laughter bubbled like champagne, sparkling, artificial. I wished I could vanish into the wallpaper. Ethan stood in the center of it all, dazzling as ever, his perfectly tailored blazer catching every sliver of light. He was animated, surrounded by nodding relatives, boasting about his brand new Tesla plaid like it had descended from the heavens. He glanced at me, one of those sideways, punchy with a smile looks, and said loudly enough for the chandelier to tremble, "Still renting, Lauren? At your age? Giving money to landlords? Wow." A ripple of snickers ran through the room. My chest tightened. I forced a smile so rehearsed it should have won awards. In our family, success was theater. Ethan, he was the star. The custom suits, the waterfront house in the suburbs of Chicago, the vacations in Santorini, all perfectly Instagrammed. I was the silent sister, the one who brought spinach dip to family dinners and ducked under the radar. I reached for a cookie just to have something to do with my trembling hands. Ethan kept going. "Some people just don't have drive," he said with mock pity. "It's sad, really." I stared at the pastel egg centerpiece on the table, colors too soft for the bitterness in my mouth. I wanted to leave, to disappear into the spring air, but just before I turned away, Ethan leaned in close and whispered, "You're a disappointment, Lauren." His breath smelled of mint and malice. He had no idea what was coming next. After the gathering, I found Ethan by the coat rack, grinning at his phone like he'd just bought the moon. He didn't even look up when he said, "You really should do better. The family's embarrassed by you." A tremor started in my chest and spread outward. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I already knew. "You live in that shoebox apartment," he scoffed, still scrolling. "You own nothing. Grandpa Charles left me everything for a reason. I built something. You're still playing small." He dusted his shoulder like I'd tainted his designer threads just by standing near. I clenched my fists. Ethan talked like he'd pulled himself up by sheer brilliance, but I knew better. He'd had help at every turn. Praise from our parents, funding from Grandpa, endless cheerleading from the sidelines. I, on the other hand, had been told to stay quiet and let Ethan shine. I didn't respond. I just smiled, grabbed my coat, and walked into the crisp Chicago night with a single thought burning in my mind. Enough. The drive home blurred past, the lights of the city streaking across the windshield like silent fireflies. When I arrived at my downtown apartment, I stood in the lobby for a long moment, collecting myself. My building wasn't fancy, but it was mine. For now. Inside, my space was quiet, minimalist, warm. A single painting from a rising Chicago artist hung above my entryway table. The furniture was custom made, elegant without flash. Every piece told a story, just not the kind Ethan could understand. I set my bag down, opened my laptop, and typed in the passcode. A private spreadsheet opened instantly. The screen filled with rows of property records, trust fund holdings, and diversified investments. My fingers danced across the trackpad, checking balances, reviewing growth charts. Ethan thought I owned nothing, but I owned more than he could imagine. I closed the laptop slowly and sat in silence, letting the truth settle in my chest like armor. I hadn't always been this woman. I could still see Ethan at 12, wearing his first pinstripe suit. Our parents had hovered around him like stylists at a photo shoot, adjusting his tie, shining his shoes, calling him our future leader. I stood in the doorway, 10 years old, in secondhand jeans, watching. Forgotten. At piano recitals, the camera followed him. At dinner, Mom asked about his day first, always. I grew up unseen. But invisibility has its perks. I used the quiet to study, to plan. While Ethan showed off, I absorbed. Learned how wealth really worked, how legacies were built, not loudly, but carefully, over time. When Grandpa passed, he left everything to Ethan. Property, stocks, a trust fund large enough to start an empire. I got nothing. Not even a dusty photo frame. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. I walked out of the lawyer's office, eyes dry and fists clenched, and looked up at the sky like it might drop me a miracle. It didn't. But what it gave me was better. Resolve. I worked part-time jobs. I devoured books on finance. I took online courses in real estate flipping, market timing, value investing. I started with small properties in mid-tier markets, flipping, saving, reinvesting. Every penny mattered. I did it quietly. I became someone who didn't need anyone's permission to win. A few weeks after Easter, I received a letter. Elegant envelope, gold embossing. It was an invitation to a high-profile gala, congratulating me on a major philanthropic contribution to Chicago's public libraries. I'd helped fund literacy centers in underserved neighborhoods, using anonymous donations filtered through one of my private entities. I rarely accepted public recognition. But this time, I said yes. The night before the event, Ethan showed up unannounced. He walked into my apartment like he still believed I lived in squalor, eyes scanning the custom furniture, pausing briefly at the invitation on my table. "What's this?" he asked, lifting it with two fingers like it might stain him. "A gala, you?" I smiled politely. "Just something for donors." He scoffed. "Who'd you scam for that?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. For a split second, I saw it. The confusion in his eyes, the subtle panic, the cracks beginning to show in his perfect, polished surface, but I said nothing. Let him stew. He still had no idea what I truly owned, or what was coming next. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family? How did you respond? Do you think silent success is more powerful than public praise? What would you have done in Lauren's position? Confront Ethan or stay silent? Can someone raised with favoritism ever truly understand humility? Let me know your thoughts below. Your perspective might just become the next twist in this story. The rumors started as whispers. Aunt Cheryl texted me out of the blue. "Are you okay, sweetie? Heard something strange from Ethan." Then came the call from Uncle Dennis, his voice hesitant. "Listen, Lauren, I don't believe the gossip, but Ethan said you might be over-leveraged." I didn't answer most of them. What was the point? Ethan was spinning tales, telling people I was drowning in debt, that I was renting because I couldn't afford a down payment. He even suggested, offhandedly, of course, that I might be laundering money through shell companies. It was absurd. But in our family, scandal stuck harder than truth. I heard even Mom had started echoing his concerns, gently warning relatives that I was going through a phase. Of course she did. I stayed silent. Not because I was afraid, but because I was focused. Instead of calling up cousins or defending myself in group chats, I took a quiet drive through the old neighborhood, the place where it all began. The street where Ethan had once bragged about his toy race cars, while I sat on the curb with a broken jump rope and dreams no one cared about. The house we grew up in was still there, paint chipped, porch sagging, a dusty for sale sign stabbed into the lawn like a half-hearted apology. I pulled over, sat in the car, watched the wind move through the dead hydrangeas. Then I picked up my phone. "Hi." "Yes," I told the real estate agent. "I'd like to make a full cash offer." Quietly, through an LLC. Back in the city, Ethan showed up again. This time he brought a thick portfolio. An opportunity, he called it. "A real shot to get you back on your feet," he said with an oily grin. It was a real estate development plan turning protected wetland into a luxury condo complex. Flashy renderings, promised profits, glitter in every bullet point. I flipped through the documents silently. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Zoning issues, environmental restrictions, pending litigation flagged in small print. No thanks, I said, handing it back. He snorted. You've always lacked vision. And just like that, he left, brushing past my custom dining chairs like they were made of cardboard. He had no idea. Weeks passed. I focused on my work, my life, my real investments. A vineyard estate in France I'd acquired years ago, an architectural restoration project in Italy. My name wasn't on any of the public documents, of course, just the trust names I'd built from scratch. Meanwhile, the Ethan facade was beginning to crack. I started hearing things. A contact at a finance firm mentioned his over-aggressive borrowing. A legal friend whispered about an investigation tied to mishandled client funds. Ethan was overextended, and the mask was slipping. Then one evening, I received a call from a property manager, one of my teams in a luxury Chicago suburb. A tenant was late on their mortgage payment, they said. It's the Westfield estate, the manager explained. Your trust owns it. The occupant, Ethan Clark, is requesting a grace period. I froze. Ethan had been renting, from me, the house he bragged about at every dinner, the symbol of his power, the one he claimed to own outright. My trust had acquired it years ago in a foreclosure sale. I'd almost forgotten. Until now. The manager asked, How would you like to proceed? I took a deep breath. Treat him like any other tenant, I said. No special treatment. Follow standard protocol. The next day, he was at my door, red-faced, breathing fire. You think this is funny? He shouted, shoving documents into my hands. You own my house? You've been collecting rent from me? I didn't flinch. Business is business, Ethan. You lied to everyone, he spat, pretending to be broke, living small. I never pretended, I replied calmly. You just never asked. He paced, furious. So what now? You gonna evict me? Toss me out like garbage? I tilted my head. That depends. Can you afford to stay? He didn't answer. And for the first time in our lives, Ethan Clark had no comeback. Later that week, our mother called, her voice trembling. How could you do this to your brother? She demanded. He's family. I wanted to laugh, or cry, or both. Mom, I said. He borrowed too much, defaulted on his payments. I just enforced the contract. He says you set him up, that you've always wanted to ruin him. I closed my eyes. My chest tightened. No, Mom, he's been ruining himself for years. I just stopped protecting him from the truth. There was a long pause, and then she whispered, bitterly, You're trying to overshadow him again. Click. I knew this was far from over. Ethan wouldn't go down quietly, but this time, I wasn't the one hiding. I wasn't afraid of his tantrums anymore, because I had built something real, something enduring, something he could never touch. If you were in Lauren's shoes, discovering your brother was unknowingly renting from you, would you show him mercy or let the contract run its course? Drop your thoughts below. I'm dying to hear your take. The days after the confrontation felt strangely calm. No calls from Ethan, no texts, no drive-by lectures in my lobby, just silence. But I knew that silence well. It was the quiet right before the glass shatters. Then came the email. A colleague from Ethan's law firm forwarded me a memo. It was happening. Ethan had been terminated. The internal investigation confirmed he'd diverted over $300,000 in client funds to cover personal expenses. His partners were furious. Clients had walked out. Lawsuits were underway. The unraveling had begun. Next, the property manager called. He hasn't responded to notices, she said gently. His grace period is up next week. Should we proceed? I paused. I could picture Ethan sitting in his once proud estate, the place he flaunted at family dinners, now just another house slipping from his hands. Follow protocol, I said quietly. It's time. Maybe it. On eviction day, I didn't show up. I couldn't. Instead, I stayed at my lakeside cabin. another hidden property under my trust, sipping hot tea as the sun painted streaks across the water. I felt not triumphant, not even vindicated, just still. Ethan had mocked me for years. He called me small, invisible, but he was the one who'd built his life on borrowed illusions. Now, for once, reality had caught up. The next family dinner was tense. It was held at my mother's cramped suburban home, the one she'd refused to sell even after Dad passed. The air inside felt heavy, as if grief and guilt clung to the walls. Ethan arrived late, disheveled, his blazer wrinkled, eyes puffy, skin pale. He didn't look at anyone until his gaze landed on me. "You," he said, voice trembling. "You ruined me." Gasps fluttered around the table. I didn't flinch. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head too many times. "I enforced a contract," I said, calm as ever. "You defaulted. You lied. I just stopped shielding you." "You're jealous," he roared, slamming his fist on the table. "You always wanted to take what was mine." "I didn't take anything," I said, standing slowly. "You gave it away, bit by bit, to your pride, to your lies." The room fell silent. Mom looked between us, tears pooling. "Stop," she whispered. "Please, just stop." I left, without dessert, without guilt. Some wounds didn't heal around dinner tables. They healed in distance. Weeks passed. Ethan's wife left him. His friends distanced themselves. The lawsuits piled up. He went dark on social media. His empire, built on spotlight and credit, collapsed in slow motion. I kept moving forward. I traveled to France to oversee one of my vineyards, a lush hillside estate where the workers knew me simply as Miss Lauren. I asked questions. I listened. I paid everyone on time. Later, I visited Italy, walking through the stone halls of a museum I'd helped restore. Its walls whispered stories of ancient resilience, stories not unlike my own. Back home, my life was simple, serene. I never flaunted my wealth, never posted photos of gala nights or estate views. I didn't need the world to clap. I just needed to breathe. Then, a letter. Not a text, not an email, a physical, handwritten letter. The handwriting was familiar. Inside, only one sentence. "Lauren, I didn't see you. I didn't try. I'm sorry. Ethan." I read it twice, and then again. There was no manipulation in the words, no strings, just remorse. The kind that doesn't scream, it whispers. I didn't write back, but I didn't tear it up either. A month later, another letter came. Longer this time. Ethan described losing everything, hitting rock bottom, learning what it meant to have no safety net, no one cheering, no one clapping. He asked for a coffee. No business pitch, no sales talk, just coffee. I thought long and hard. I wasn't sure what forgiveness looked like. I wasn't sure if it came with trust or just space. But something in me softened. Maybe the years had worn down the sharper edges. Maybe seeing him broken opened a small door in me I thought had long since closed. So I texted, "Let's talk." We met at a quiet cafe on Maple Street, neutral ground. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but spiritually. Like the spotlight had finally burned out, and all that remained was just a man who had lost his way. We talked for an hour, about nothing, and everything. There were no grand apologies, no dramatic reconciliations, just understanding. And maybe that was enough. Later that week, I returned to my villa in Italy. The sun was setting over the olive groves, casting long shadows across the hills. I walked barefoot through the vineyard, my name, Lauren Estates, engraved discreetly on a small wooden sign near the entrance. I ran my fingers over the letters. This life, every acre, every dollar, every moment, had been built stone by stone, without applause, without inheritance, without favoritism. Just quiet, persistent power. I smiled. Because I didn't need to win loud. I just needed to win real. What did you feel as this story unfolded? Did Lauren make the right choice in the end? Should Ethan be forgiven? Or is his apology too little, too late? Can family wounds ever truly heal? If this story moved you, even just a little, drop a at or comment 100 below. Tell me what country you're watching from. I want to know where this story traveled. And if you think someone else needs to hear this quiet but powerful message, share this video with them. I'll be reading every comment. Thank you for coming on this journey.